Sometimes, it isn't failure that destroys a person's life. It's the quiet habit of waiting for tomorrow. Laziness never comes loudly. It doesn't shout or demand attention. Instead, it whispers. It whispers that comfort is safer than effort, that resting now is wiser than acting now, that tomorrow is endless and forgiving. And so, without noticing, a life begins to slip away. Not in great disasters, but in little delays that pile up until the weight is unbearable. If you've ever found yourself saying, "I'll do it later," this story is for you. Armand was a young boy growing up in a small village surrounded by golden fields and green hills. The morning sun always painted the landscape beautifully, and every day seemed to carry endless possibilities. But Armand carried a habit that threatened to darken his future. He was lazy. Not in an obvious, rebellious way. He wasn't rude, and he wasn't unkind. In fact, he was intelligent, thoughtful, and capable. But whenever the moment came to act, he postponed it. When his father asked him to bring water from the well, Armand nodded politely, but then he wandered off to sit by the river, skipping stones until the sun dipped low. When his mother asked him to sweep the courtyard, he agreed, but then chose to nap beneath the shade of the old banyan tree. And when his teacher gave him homework, Armand smiled and thought, "I'll do it tomorrow. After all, what's the rush?" At first, people overlooked it. He was a child. Childhood carries a certain freedom, a certain lack of urgency. But laziness is like a seed. If planted and ignored, it grows quietly, slowly sending roots into every corner of life. One morning, Armand's father asked him to fix the wooden fence around their goat's pen. A few planks had broken, leaving wide gaps. Armand promised he would repair it after breakfast. But breakfast led to wandering through the fields, wandering led to resting under a tree, and resting led to sleep. That night, when the family returned from a neighbor's gathering, the goats were gone. They had slipped out through the broken fence. For hours, the family searched the fields in the cold moonlight. When they finally gathered the goats again, exhausted and angry, his father looked at him and said, "Son, one day, your delays will cost you more than goats. They will cost you your future." But Armand shrugged the warning aside. He was young. Time seemed infinite. Tomorrow always felt secure. At school, the same pattern continued. He was clever enough to understand lessons quickly, but when it came to assignments, he delayed. His teacher often reminded him, "Knowledge is like a lamp, Armand. If you don't light it, you'll sit in the dark." Yet, Armand laughed it off. The day of final exams arrived. His classmates had been studying late into the night for weeks. Armand, however, had planned to prepare the night before. But when the time came, he felt tired and told himself he'd wake early to revise. He overslept. In the exam hall, his mind was blank. He stared at the paper as his classmates wrote confidently. For the first time, he felt the true sting of his habit. Not only had laziness stolen his preparation, it had stolen his confidence. Years passed, and Armand became a young man. His dreams were big. He wanted to earn wealth, to see the great city beyond the hills, to give his parents a better life. But dreams without discipline are like clouds without rain. One day, a traveling merchant visited the village, and seeing Armand's intelligence, offered him a place in his caravan. The merchant promised to teach him trade in the city, to give him the tools for a prosperous future. Armand was overjoyed, but the night before his departure, laziness whispered again, "You've got time. Sleep well tonight. You can pack in the morning." He overslept. By the time he arrived at the merchant's home, the caravan had already left. His chance was gone forever. He walked back through the village, shame pressing on his shoulders like a heavy sack. People shook their heads, some pitied him, others mocked him. But what hurt most was not their words. It was the silence of his father, a silence filled with disappointment. Laziness collects its payment slowly, but with interest. For every day Armand delayed, life grew harsher. He promised himself he would change, but promises without action are only lies we tell ourselves. Then came the day his father fell gravely ill. The responsibility of the household and fields fell on Armand. The fences were weak, the crops untended, the animals restless. Years of delay had left everything fragile. He told himself he would rise early, work hard, and make things right. But discipline is not built overnight. His body was weak from years of comfort, his hands soft from idleness, his mind quick to grow tired. He tried, but he stumbled. He tried again, but every task felt heavier than it should. Work that his father once did with ease now drained him completely. And when the harvest season came, the fields yielded little. Hunger crept into the house, and his mother's eyes grew tired with worry. That was when Armand realized the terrible truth. Laziness had not just cost him his future, it had stolen his ability to protect the people he loved. He sat outside his home one evening, staring at the horizon, and for the first time, he wept. Not for lost goats, not for lost exams, not even for the caravan he had missed, but for the years wasted in comfort, the years that could never return. From that day, he forced himself to change. He woke before the sun, dragging his unwilling body from the bed. He pushed himself into the fields, even when every muscle ached. He repaired fences, carried water, planted seeds, endured blisters and sweat. Slowly, painfully, he built a rhythm. The land responded. Green returned to the fields. Food returned to the table. His mother smiled again, faintly, but he knew deep down, this was survival, not victory. Because no matter how hard he worked now, he could not reclaim what was lost. The merchant's caravan would never come again. The education he had ignored could not be caught up easily. The years of youth, when energy burned brightly, had slipped away. The price of laziness was not just the hardship of today, it was the permanent loss of yesterday's opportunities. As Armand grew older, he began to speak to the village children. He would gather them under the shade of the banyan tree where he once wasted hours, and he would tell them his story. He told them how laziness feels sweet in the moment, but its sweetness turns bitter. How every small delay builds into a mountain of regret. How tomorrow is never promised. Some laughed, thinking he was exaggerating, but others listened, and those who listened carried his warning in their hearts. They worked hard, studied diligently, and built lives of discipline. For them, Armand's regret became a guide, a light showing them the dangers he had not seen. And so, Armand's story became his gift. He had lost much, but he used his pain to protect others from the same fate. The truth is this: laziness always demands payment. You may not see it today or tomorrow, but one day you will face its cost, and that cost is always heavier than the effort you once avoided. Remember this lesson. Every time you choose laziness over action, you are writing a line of regret in the story of your life. And every time you act, even when it is difficult, you are writing a line of strength, a line of hope. So do not wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow belongs to time, not to you. Begin today. Act today. Rise today. Because the price of laziness is regret, but the reward of effort is a life you can be proud of. And if this story touched your heart, don't just let it fade. Share it with someone who needs this reminder, someone who might be wasting their precious time in the comfort of delay. And if you want more stories that open your eyes and awaken your strength, subscribe to Life Lessons Library, because sometimes the right story at the right moment is enough to change a life forever.